I am Christina Wong. I wear a lot of hats. I am the Pulitzer Prize finalist in drama 2022, but I'm also a Creative Capital Awardee. Can you believe this? I'm also a proud board member, which has allotted me all the swag. Folks, I am so happy to be here at Lincoln Center. Would be great if Lincoln Center actually presented me live and not through a Zoom video played on a screen. But you know what? I'll take it. I get it. We're here to celebrate that we gave away $2.5 million in grants to artists. Super excited that we are here. We're going to watch some works in progress, huh? Let's do it.
Hi, my name is Ilana Savdie. I'm an artist originally from Barranquilla, Colombia, and now based in Brooklyn. In my work, primarily through painting, I've explored the transformative power of performance amidst the rise of power regimes and resistance movements, considering how power structures can be resisted, transgressed, or dismantled. I draw from instances of theatricality and contradiction as mediated through the body, colliding the clinical and the folkloric. I pull visual references as much from the biological as from the carnivalesque, looking to organisms in nature that exhibit characteristics of the trickster, so as to trouble the boundaries between one body and another or inside and out. So I'll look to organisms that shapeshift, such as the parasite, or instances where camouflage is practiced as a mode of survival or seduction. For this project, I would like to examine the mixed origins of carnivals in the Americas and the Caribbean. At the core of my research is a desire to better understand how histories are translated through folklore and how that continues to offer modes of disruption. My plan is to begin working with the performers, scholars, and organizers of the Carnaval de Barranquilla, who I've come to know, and branching out from there to explore other carnivals, religious festivals, and historical reenactments, accumulating a sort of embodied understanding of the impact of cultural translations. I hope to expand upon the research which informs my paintings, colliding the gathering of references into the work itself to allow the process to coexist with the form. The process of intermingling reference images, which normally happens in the studio, will be reflected both within the video work and in the ultimate installation, wherein painting, video, and sculpture will complicate, build on, and echo each other, emphasizing the viewer's embodied experience.
My name is Katie Grinnan, and I'm a visual artist from Los Angeles, California. I've always been just as interested in what isn't visible as I am in the visible world. I often feel like I'm trying to sculpt a blind spot in human perception. A current question that I've been wrestling with is how can we see outside of late-stage capitalism, cycles of extraction, overproduction, and consumption?
How do we find new ways of living, shifting perspective to consider ways that humans and non-humans are embedded within ecological cycles rather than economic boom and bust cycles?
My project titled The Vault uses a bank vault as a model for both real and simulated realities, creating a speculative space, reconsidering systems of valuation, preservation, and cohabitation within the backdrop of extreme climate and weather conditions. These vault doors will form an eclipse, creating a framework for the installation. I am working with artist Harris Rosenblum to help model and simulate extreme weather conditions, such as floods, erosion, mudslides, drought, and fires, followed by new growth. I've been gathering data surrounding weather and climate patterns in Los Angeles to use in the simulation. I've also begun to meet with ecologists to imagine possible ecosystems that will thrive in these conditions. I live part-time off the grid in Topanga Canyon, on wild land that has weathered many landslides over the past several decades. Living between Los Angeles and Topanga, I'm frequently impacted by these extreme weather conditions. My final installation will include several sculptures that concentrate on non-human sensory systems, multiple time scales, and air samples that mark events and places. Within the accompanying simulation, as weather conditions run their course, mimicking systems of climate change, the capitalist container will begin to dissolve, making way for resilient new ecologies.
There's a whole other universe directly under our feet. An invisible system of sediment, molten rock, and tectonic plates is in constant flux. Over the last 50 years, underground drilling, including groundwater extraction, mining, and fracking, has upset this delicate system. In the US, no city is sinking faster than Houston. Some neighborhoods are dropping more than 2 inches a year, mostly due to groundwater extraction. But in this case, the land isn't washing away. It's slowly collapsing from underneath. For my Creative Capital project, I'm building an exhibition and performance that repurposes defunct navigational tools, including foghorns, astrolabes, and early sonar systems, to sonify land loss in Houston. Much like you see in this exhibition here, the work features systems of kinetic sculptures that make sound through mechanical movement and audience interaction. This translates a slow-moving geological process into something physical and audible. This project also features a large-scale performance in Galveston Bay. Similar in scale to this video, the project will feature over 100 community members performing on foghorn sculptures, serving as both sound devices and visual markers in the landscape. Houston is Sinking turns an invisible process into something you can hear, feel, and stand inside.
I think I'm just gonna finish your eyebrows and then like your lips, and then I think we're good. Yeah. What was the last badge that you got?
I mean, it was just a stepping badge.
Right.
So I got that badge.
My name is Susan Chen, and the painting project that I'm working on is titled Chinatown Girl Scouts Past and Present. In 2020, I was working with Chinatown Block Watch, and that was where I met Jennifer Yip, who is the leader of the Girl Scouts troop. I think the whole project honestly started off from just like this friendship that I had with Auntie Jen. She was very enthusiastic, and her daughter is a Girl Scout, and it just kind of happened organically. But I think for me, I actually think Girl Scouts is this thing that has been exported to a lot of places in the world, actually. I was in it for like a year, just on the other side of the world. I'm originally from Hong Kong. I'm like a first-generation American, so just in the last few years, I have been quite obsessed with Chinatown and the ideas and what it stands for and all the people who came before. And I also love the idea of the girls who are running around with their cookies and they're sort of juggling, like living between two worlds. What I found fascinating is that this particular Girl Scouts troop has been working and in action for like 100 years. Well, we know that Chinatown is going through gentrification. Even these Girl Scouts were telling me that their troop is like getting smaller and smaller every year just because people are moving out. For this project, I'm starting with 8 of the individual portraits and then hopefully doing like a large group portrait after that.
I'm Janelle Reyes, and I'm an artist who has been doing projects centered around urban agriculture, forestry, conservation, and regeneration. So the project that I've most recently taken on is a collaboration called Land. And a big part of this project for me has just been about developing my own sensitivity and awareness to this place. Hearing the bird songs, seeing red-winged blackbirds balancing delicately on reeds at the pond, desire paths left in the grass by voles and field mice. It's really about building and creating empathy with different kinds of communities that we share the world with.
I'm Oscar Rene Cornejo, and I'm an artist that uses traditional building and art making techniques to share stories of resilience, reconciliation, and healing. And it is these stories within the landscape that I perceived by understanding where the materials came from that I made these stories out of. If we can grow a tomato in an urban farm, what would it look like if we can grow our own materials as artists, and what type of agency that creates?
This spring, we're going to be undertaking our first large-scale land-based project. It is the planting of a Miyawaki forest that will comprise 320 trees and shrubs. We've designed this forest around plants that will be able to supply art-making materials, but it's really not just a forest for future artists. It is a forest that will support a lot of the wildlife that I described that are on the grounds of land.
In my work, I look at how other species and living systems grow, change, and evolve so that I can develop adaptive architectural solutions to Miami's environmental precarity. This is what led me in 2020 to begin a project called Symbiotic House, through which I designed prototype dwellings for climate care and environmental repair. In Miami, where many artists live in apartments without outdoor space, I'm investigating how regenerative land art functions without direct access to land. This question has guided me through the design process of The Living Room, a South Beach studio apartment I'm transforming into an inhabitable aquaponics sculpture. Aquaponic systems drastically reduce water needs because water is recycled through closed-loop processes. Using water sourced from the areas around Lake Okeechobee most directly impacted by agricultural runoff, the sculpture will demonstrate that we can use living systems to remove disruptive nutrients from the greater Everglades watershed before they further impact aquatic environments. The sculpture is biomimetic, based on the wild mutualisms already present in wetlands to shape a system where plants and aquatic animals live together for mutual benefit. As water flows from ponds to planters, the plants remove the nutrients present from runoff. The plants filter the fish wastewater and return it to the ponds. Visually, the sculpture will reject the cold industrial design present in similar systems, tanks, PVC pipes, etc., and rely on handmade ceramics, bamboo piping, and biomaterials derived from sargassum seaweed and pine rosin. The living room will grow into a nature culture learning center, where dwelling becomes an opportunity to live our climate politics. It is a seed towards a way of living abundantly through ecological reciprocity.
Hi, my name is Ash Fury. I'm a composer and sound artist, and my Creative Capital project is called Animal, the Underground. My work explores the physical force of sound, its elemental friction, its visceral power, and I use this capacity for sound to impact our bodies and affect our nervous systems, to shape social sites of listening that are body amped and adrenaline tuned. My Creative Capital project is conceived as an underground listening gym. It riffs on the logics of kink clubs or circuit workouts or CrossFit gyms with a series of sonic propositions to the body that exercise our animal capacity to sense. The project will debut in downtown LA in a site that has startling acoustics. It's this labyrinthian concrete basement with a massive empty pool inside. I will activate this architecture with a sprawling spatial sound system and a rig of custom full-bodied sonic machines that spread throughout the site like stations at a gym. The point of this listening gym is not to force participation, but to up the ante of body investment and to activate a heightened social sphere that functions entirely outside of language. Animal the Underground has the amplified expanse and dark anonymity of the club. It has the architectural vastness of a crumbling cathedral. It has the spatial dynamism of a weather system moving through a forest at night. But its shapes encounter at the scale of the bonfire or the kurchak bench or the bathroom line. It's after a kind of intimacy and bonding that emerges from shared sensory-intensive experiences, like the morning after a crazy snowstorm or when the power goes out and we all walk out into the street in the dark. It's using the primal technology of sound to lure a group of humans into an amplified awakeness to the present, and all the present is asking of us.
Hi, my name is Takahiro Yamamoto. I am a multidisciplinary artist and choreographer. Holo Center is a multi-year project based on the duality of nothingness and existence. I consider nothingness as a space where all the contradictory and random factors can coexist without depending on the consciousness to decipher and to make sense. I'm using multiple artistic routes, a short film, publication, and dance performance to further expand the conversation about this deeply philosophical concept. At this point in the process, I am engaging in various movement qualities drawn from Zen Buddhist ideals, such as extreme slowness in a transcendental state and emotionally charged and highly physical movement. In the current accomplishment-focused society, I often feel the pressure to prove who I am, especially as a person of diaspora, by constantly listing some things, such as achievements, social labels, and identifiers. This project is to hollow out what is legible on the surface and expose multiple elements from within, such as quietude, rage, erotics, pleasure, and grief, to accept oneself as a whole.
Hi, I'm Holland Andrews.
And I'm Yunia Erikwan.
We're the co-creators, directors, and performers of the experimental opera, How Does It Feel to Look at Nothing?
We first met in New York City, quickly became friends, then collaborators and co-conspirators, and then we got married, and are now developing our largest, most meaningful project yet.
On one level, How Does It Feel to Look at Nothing is a pre-origin story of a deity of nothingness. Using mythology, composition, improvisation, dance, ritual, and theater, we explore the forces and conditions that shape a deity's formation and the boundless possibilities that emerge when something becomes nothing.
And on a personal level, we're developing the work while simultaneously engaging with questions of queer parenthood, trans pregnancy, and contemporary life as trans artists of color during a period of American disintegration.
In the opera, we use an improvised language of disintegration to become channels through which this crumbling world can pass through. With these falling pieces, as well as with artifacts from our lives as soon-to-be parents, God willing, we construct a continuum of trans futures that can hold everything and nothing. How Does It Feel to Look at Nothing is our hopeful vessel for this profoundly vulnerable moment. Within it, we allow ourselves to be immersed fully and unapologetically in both performance making and family building, strengthened by a creative community of collaborators, family, and friends.
There is a feeling when I'm with my mother and sister, from my inside, it's this connection, a feeling that doesn't happen anywhere else.
I believe in destiny because you can plan as much as you want, but destiny waits for you. And then to do it with my children. Every day when I practice, I am alive.
To share something with my mother and my adult sister, it's not an adequate word, but it feels very beautiful to have this incredibly strong, supported relationship.
We're very lucky to work together as a family. It's very important to our work because the intergenerational nature and how we feed off of each other and how we each have very specific experiences with our Indian culture and our American culture.
The Liminal Museum explores the concept of the feminine protector in the arts, education, nature, and humanity within Indian culture and mythology. Our mother and grandmother, Menaka, empowered us to bring our art form of Bharatanatyam here as immigrants to this country, and now it has found a new home and a new voice within us. She passed away in late 2023, and the Liminal Museum honors her, tracing stories of our family as a microcosm of women in traditional societies. Her life, which was shaped by repression, showed that art is embedded in our bodies and souls and cannot be taken from us. In this installation performance, audiences move through a space infused with recorded voices, artifacts, and live performance, witnessing how traditions are passed on, regenerated, and reimagined. This is a clarion call about female resilience, the necessity of ancestral knowledge, and the complexities of aging and elder care in contemporary societies.
My name is Damon Locks. I'm an educator, musician, and visual artist. My project, Live from CPS, stems from my 10 years teaching art inside Stateville Correctional Center, a men's maximum security prison. I saw up close what our justice system looks like. At the same time, I was also introducing civically engaged art to Chicago public high school classrooms. The cross-pollination coincided with building up the music group I lead, Black Monument Ensemble. Which is a way to explore issues of race and culture in the U.S. From a small group of collaborators, it grew into an extended network of singers, improvising musicians, and dancers. While we tour internationally, our focus is on placing the group and its music in front of people in the community that it arises from. Now I've set my mind to creating 5 Black Monument performances and workshops inside high schools across the South and West Side of Chicago. My teaching experience led me here. We will create resource guides for teachers to help make our performances into a bridge to more learning. In partnership with the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress, I will use archival materials that make our historical moment live in sonic relationship to other historical moments. We will document these performances and create an album from the recordings. So until then, keep your eyes and ears peeled for Black Monument Ensemble live from CPS.
My name is Zane Rodolfo. I am a Trinidadian-born composer and polymedia artist. Shelter is a multimedia project investigating the connection between the Spiritual Baptists of Trinidad and Tobago and the Gullah Geechee ring shout found in the Georgia Sea Islands and South Carolina. The Americans were formerly enslaved African-American colonial Marines who fought for Britain during the War of 1812, and as a result, were given free lands in Moruga, southern Trinidad.
Dry soil, and yet we're growing rice. This is what our African forefathers preserved.
The presence of the Americans deeply influenced the Spiritual Baptist faith. The Spiritual Baptist faith is indigenous to Trinidad and Tobago and combines Christian theologies with African cosmologies. Between 1917 and 1951, Spiritual Baptists were banned from practicing, from worshiping and gathering. The ring shout is a deeply spiritual practice practiced by Gullah Geechee communities. Many songs, hymns, and aspects of worship, such as shouts, groans, and vibrant rhythmic expression, common tropes found in both practices will inform my original compositions. Shouter will present these through a contemporary multimedia format, blending archival images, field recordings, interviews, original compositions, projections, and live performance. Shouters filming, recording, and research will take place in Trinidad and Tobago, Georgia, and South Carolina. Ultimately, Shouter is about our deep diasporic connections. It is about Black communities who, through tradition and practice, continue to sustain life, flourish, and thrive.
We enter the opera when she's just been imprisoned, and we go through that process with her of despair and remembering how she got there and somehow finding hope. And I found that this was a really powerful story and a really powerful message of how to find hope, and a story about Liliuokalani that a lot of people don't know. The libretto itself is taken from her own writings. Her diaries, which were published a few years ago, are written in both English and Olelo Hawaii, or Hawaiian. And so the libretto is in both languages because the queen was multilingual and wrote in both languages. And so it incorporates not only her own words, but also words from the songs and influences from the melodies and the harmonies of her compositions into the texture of the opera. The workshop that we did in October of 2022 with Roomful of Teeth was for the opera, and I thought that they would be a really wonderful way to express some of her internal thoughts at the time, because Liliuokalani writes that she didn't have instruments at the beginning when she was imprisoned. She only had her own voice and the voice in her head to compose. And so using Roomful of Teeth's really beautiful different ways of timbres and singing and their experience with contemporary music, I thought that that would be a really interesting way to express the interior thoughts of Liliuokalani as she was composing and as she was thinking about these things while she was imprisoned.
I'm Sister Sylvester, and I make visual essays in performance, film, and new media. And I also moonlight as an amateur microbiologist. In the past, a lot of my work has been collective reading experiences. Ghost Genes will be an act of collective listening. Ghost Genes is a participatory performance that uses bone conduction transducers to create a surreal encounter with the sounds and stories of synthetic biology and ghosts from the history of genetics. It's part of a larger series of works where I bring the tools of biotechnology into the bodies of the audience. The series began with a hat that was a costume at Bertolt Brecht's Berliner Ensemble and hadn't been washed since the 1930s. I extracted the DNA of both humans and microbes from the hat and used archival and forensic research to track the stories of the people who'd worn it. The performance ended in a documentary you could drink, a work that takes place directly in the physical matter of the audience. In Ghost Genes, the second work in the series, the site of the performance moves from your gut to your bones. I'm using transducers to make an audio work that can only be heard if the audience create a line of conduction between an object in their skulls, using their own bones. So, for example, touching an elbow to a table or wall, and then the bony part of their hands to their cheekbones, turning their skull into a resonant cavity where the audio plays, and giving the impression of sounds and words that come from inside their own mind. The audio experience is accompanied by an interactive exhibition of artist books that explore the relationship between the metaphors of DNA as a code, a book of life, a set of instructions, and fascist ontologies in the history of genetics. As politics and science come together to encroach on our bodies, on our most basic and intimate physical matter, as techno-fascists envision a world where humans are reduced to lines of code, this work listens out to the ghosts, to those other spectres who live alongside our time, whispering to us other possible ways that could have been, and still can be.
My name is Dolissa Medina. I'm an experimental filmmaker from the borderlands of South Texas, and my project, A Light for Ambiguous Loss, is a documentary meditation on how a frozen image might heal frozen grief. My film explores the world of forensic macrophotography, a new technique that resurrects lost fingerprints of the anonymous dead. I've been following Tom, a retired Border Patrol agent, as he trains investigators in his experimental method to identify missing migrants. Less expensive and faster than DNA tests, these photos could become a global game changer for those who wait. This project continues my artistic investigation into what it means to bear witness to spectacles of loss. It returns full circle to my first film, a story about my great-grandfather's disappearance during the Mexican Revolution. Through this project, I want to explore larger questions of liminality and mortality, and what it means when border communities like my own serve as testing sites for the rest of the nation and world. To make this film, I'll reconstruct the stories behind the cases and experiment with generative AI. Like forensic macrophotography, AI relies on iterative processes and data sets. I'll use Tom's case files to produce animations and cinematic explorations of scale and light. I'll also ask people connected to the cases about ambiguous loss in their own lives. Dementia, addiction, incarceration, deportations. How do we live with people we love whose absence is ever present? My feature documentary needs a producer and funding, AI mentors and research labs, production partners, and an impact producer. Thank you to Creative Capital.
My name is Darol Oluke. I'm a filmmaker from and based in Los Angeles, and my project is a feature film entitled Without a Song. Without a Song is a closing-of-age story that charts an aging musician's reluctant return to Los Angeles after nearly 40 years in self-imposed exile in Denmark. Once back in Los Angeles, our protagonist attempts to repair old wounds from his past while battling an undiagnosed illness that makes it impossible for him to play his instrument. This project, which is intended for worldwide theatrical release, is deeply rooted in an extensive amount of research. I've surveyed interviews, oral histories, creative manifestos, autobiographies, and biographies by and about Black jazz artists, especially those who belong to the free jazz era, drawing inspiration from their personal histories, social lives, and dynamic spiritual worlds. A key part of my process is the construction of a visual scrapbook, a mosaic of original and found images, writings, and various ephemera that shape and illuminate the film's tone, characters, ethos, desires, and grounding ideas. Without a Song explores themes of separation and distance, friendship, intergenerational tension, human frailty, and the unrelenting passage of time. The film also looks closely at notions of alienation, belonging, and home through the figure of the Black American expat. My personal connection to this work is driven by a deep regard for the Black art form known as jazz and an interest in stories about people confronting life's final chapter and the complex interplay between tradition and change. My goal is to craft a narrative of Black life that attends to its own consciousness and poetically renders the serenity, power, and imminence of a life nearing its biological end visible in cinematic terms, all from within the context of a musical tradition that is often described as dying or near death itself.
Kept it like a secret till you could keep it no more. Found love in a subway station, pressed against the bathroom door. Dare to let your glances linger longer than before. A city park, the darkest corner, kneeling on the forest floor. Past the benches built for lovers, our forbidden country, our forbidden country.
Hi, I'm Clyde Petersen, the director of Our Forbidden Country. It's a stop-motion animated feature film that takes place on one long night. A young transmasculine character comes in from a small town to a big city and explores all kinds of queer spaces in search of community and connection. The film really started from a place of loneliness. I was searching for connection to queer elders in my hometown of Seattle. And I was searching for the history of my hometown in terms of queerness, and it had really been erased. While I was researching online, I found this teeny tiny newspaper ad from 1971 for a place called Sultan's Lavender Cinema, which was a gay cinema in downtown Seattle on First Avenue. Through word of mouth, I found a queer elder who had been there in the 1970s and had snuck out of his house as a teenager to go find gay community there. And that interview really started everything for me in terms of this project. In many ways, this film is about a personal desire to connect to a city that was not present in my lifetime and a generation of people I never got to meet and can only meet through oral histories and a reimagining of a place that I'll never get to physically go. Welcome to Our Forbidden Country.
I'm Emily Mkrtichian.
And I'm Kamee Abrahamian. As descendants of displaced and persecuted Armenians from the Swana region, our work summons ancestral reclamation, diasporic futurism, and collective justice through narrative and documentary film, multimedia installation, theater, and radical archives.
By engaging in co-creation as a political act of solidarity and care, we bring Swana peoples together to collectively imagine and build into multimedia story worlds in which we survive and thrive into liberated, visionary futures.
We bring luminous, steadfast commitment to sustainable community and care-centered practices into all the work we make, along with our rugs, our jezve, and our babies, honoring our ancestral lineages and diaspora antics.
Portals will gather an anthology of short films that explore the speculative and visionary imaginaries of Swana parents and caregivers. Through participatory world building, the project will take shape as a feature-length film and installation that centers Swana peoples in a collectively conjured world.
The story world will build on a short-form memoir I wrote called Queer Motherhood is Speculative Fiction, which conveys the inexpressible physical and emotional experiences of becoming a primary caregiver through spec fiction and multiverse travel.
Using this narrative as scaffolding, we will invite 5 artists and filmmakers who are caregivers to create a short film from their own experiences. Conceived independently but workshopped and brought to life collaboratively, Portals generates new ways for Swana caregivers to collectively imagine the politics and labor of care as crucial, not only for the survival of our people, but for our capacity to resist and thrive.
Hi, my name is Ash. The project I'm working on is a narrative feature called Sitting the Month, in Chinese, 坐月. So Sitting the Month follows our main character Jing as she returns home to Singapore following the birth of her niece, Juliet. To become an aunt and reintegrate into her estranged family, she tries to support the process of the traditional month-long postpartum confinement period and has to confront her contentious relationship with her family and the cultural politics of her hometown, which are the very causes of her departure a decade prior. Sitting the Month inhabits through our protagonist a non-male gaze exploring Asian masculinity and femininity through the complex dynamics of a Chinese Singaporean family. It is a study of gender, relationship, and society as a way to reveal more about oneself and others, to understand what social, political, cultural web we exist within, how they are created, and how they influence the conditions that make us who we are. This work comes from a very personal place. It's taken me this long to be able to have arrived at a point to see my parents as a product of their time, as am I. Asian parents will cut you a plate of sliced fruit after an argument in silence, and whether or not that is what I'm seeking, I've learned to appreciate what this signifies for them. Instead of pointing fingers, my work aims to understand and make legible the other, pulling focus on the effort and continuous attempts of enacting the action of family, no matter how flawed and human that is.
You can shape your subconscious mind and body so that it will have a certain format that fits only you, and it will be able to detect anything that is not within your flow.
My name is Peter Valentine. I live in the great city of Cambridge in the United States of America.
Despite the cold, a small crowd of Cambridge activists gathered near Central Square this afternoon to protest planned development of 27 acres of property owned by MIT.
Peter was one of the tenants who was opposing MIT's proposal to remove certain housing from the Simplex site.
The whole scheme of what the people would get out of this development, deceptively titled the Cambridge Ford Revitalization Development District, was nothing but a big preposterous lie.
He did have paranoid schizophrenia. Peter would not take medicine. He said he didn't like how it made him feel. I totally get that.
Do you remember my Uncle Peter? I'm talking to my Uncle Peter.
Well, I guess the times I've come there before, we've talked about me making a film with, like, about you.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. Can I get right to the point?
Yeah, that's always good.
So what do you do to make yourself everlasting?
Intermission, time to replenish the mission, fuel up the mind for the next edition. Grab a treat, find a seat, keep your vision intact. We be snacking at the Creative Capital, and that's just a fact. Exchanging ideas while we're looking our best. Okay, you know what? This is a ChatGPT rap, and it's awful. And this is exactly why we pay artists to come up with better stuff. Get your trash bags out, because it is the free snack and grab time. It is supermarket sweep out there, folks. I want you to go out there with your big purses, your trash bags, your boxes, and fill it with those snacks. Use the restroom, but come back quickly. Also, feel free to make a donation. It's supposed to be, it's very low pressure. Low pressure. Make a donation. No, it's low pressure. Low pressure. No, if you want, please. No, it's, yeah, if you want to make a donation. Just no pressure. No pressure, please.
Hi, I'm Samantha Nye. I'm a painter and a video installation artist here in Philadelphia. For the past 10 years, my work has revolved around reimagining pop culture from the 60s and 70s and transforming it into pleasure-filled utopias for queer women and non-binary people over the age of 60. My painting practice restages Slim Aaron's iconic poolside photographs, but instead of heirs and heiresses entertaining in their glamorous and exclusive mansions, I take those and turn them into vibrant, pleasure-filled parties with a guest list of queer women in their 70s and 80s. In my video work, I remake Scopatone films, which are campy 1960s musical productions that one could have watched in a nightclub on a machine that was part jukebox, part television screen. When I first started making these, I would cast my mom, my grandmother, and their friends. But over time, I started casting women, non-binary folks from the queer community, particularly those whose artistic careers have hugely inspired me. My Creative Capital project is called Possible Pleasures. It's a video installation that will loop 3 or 4 new Scopatone remakes. I'm currently editing the first in the Possible Pleasures loop. It's called Femininity, and it was filmed in Fire Island at the Belvedere Guest House, which is a men's-only gay resort. But luckily, they let me film a lesbian takeover starring the legendary Penny Arcade, with music performed by Peaches. In it, there's a scene that brings one of my paintings to life, a large pleasure dance party scene with 26 queer women and non-binary people that I cast from Fire Island and New York City between the ages of 55 and 91. Next month, I'll be shooting at the Madonna Inn in California, a video called Web of Love, which will star the iconic ecosexual sexologist, former porn star, and performance duo Annie Sprinkle and her wife Beth Stevens. And I will be very excited to show you someday the resulting video.
Hey, what's up, YouTube? Today, I'd like to talk about a very important issue to many, okay? Headphone jacks. Let's be honest here. Who needs headphone jacks? I mean, it's 2016.
I wouldn't give a damn if it's 2017.
It's 2018, you gotta put that out there.
This is the darkest shade of the brand new Essence foundation in 2023.
That's real today in 2020.
Like, why are you leaving me a voicemail in almost 2023, bro?
You out your goddamn mind. This damn 2016 up in this.
I can't believe that this is 2023 and America is talking about censoring education.
It's 2023,
2022,
2017.
When you're watching a CNN article and it says three names, the shooters, Trump's, and mine. That was not on my 2024 bingo card.
Does Jeff Koons' artwork deserve to be destroyed? According to my fictional art collector, the answer is absolutely yes. Koons' Ruins Atlas documents an imagined vendetta against Jeff Koons' art by an art collector bent on acquiring and destroying his works. This is my art collector, Dorothea James. While Jeff Koons was growing up to become, well, Jeff Koons, Dorothea became an avid art patron focused on women and conceptual artists. As Dorothea navigated the art market, her contempt for Jeff Koons' art grew. Obsessed, she acquired his most iconic pieces, sequestered them on her estate, and subjected them to accelerated degradation. After Dorothea's death, her estate is open to the public as Koons' Ruins. Koons' Ruins Atlas is an historical documentation of this estate. Large-scale immersive scenes, my most ambitious ever, lampoon the contemporary art world through depictions of Jeff Koons' art in a state of extreme dereliction. The combination of digital and traditional printmaking lends my critique a sense of faux historical gravitas. Explore the estate through an interactive tabletop map. A button click activates a risograph animation of an historical moment connected to each scene. With a combination of humor, fiction, and art historical pastiche, Koons' Ruins Atlas dissects the perplexing absurdities of the art market, such as presumed value, commercialism, and gender disparity. So, does Jeff Koons' artwork deserve to be destroyed? Check out my project, and then you'll know.
Hello, my name is Jared Owens. I'm an artist based here in New York. We're currently in my studio, and I want to talk today about my project, Remembering Attica, The Optics of Uprising, coming up on its 55th anniversary. So in 1971, 1,200 men in Attica State Correctional Institution staged an uprising, and I'm very interested in things they did in response to being assaulted the way they were, to being caged in, locked in like that. How did they form ways of moving inside of a place they were formerly incarcerated in, but now they had this kind of freedom. And I'm interested in not thinking of it in a controversial sense, but thinking about it as an educational opportunity for us to look back in time and see how have we changed as a society? What do we do to ensure the safety of both the staff and the inmates? So to do this, I'd like to artistically propose that we use a lot of the objects that were made. They're like artifacts to me, craftsmanship and genius and ingenuity. I'm thinking about how to commemorate the men that perished on that day. I'd like to explore the objects that were taken by the state as evidence and present them in an artistic light, the light I believe they deserve to be shown in, because their ingenuity, their life depended on it. And in that, I see that there's a great beauty in the expression of wanting to live and using a weapon or fashioning instruments, defensive instruments, to do so. is very interesting to me. So there's going to be a correlation between these objects and objects that I find out here, or objects that I create that have a conversation with the original sentiment that was expressed when these men took over the prison.
A few years ago, I worked with a group of 16 immigrant women. They're all working class, Chinese or Latinx, and they'll have limited English proficiency and limited access to the arts. Since then, I've wanted to reconvene this cohort, and now I finally can. Bay Windows, Ventanas en Saliente, or Trang Fa, is a new social practice project that's trilingual and cross-cultural. First, I'll lead a series of workshops with guest artists who will exhibit and teach G&G, or Chinese paper cutting, or papel picado, Mexican paper punching. So why paper cuts? After Spanish colonizers banned Aztec bark paper in Mexico, they imported tissue paper from China via the galleon trade. That papel chino was adopted to make papel picado. I want to draw parallels between the ingenuity of Puebla artisans under cultural genocide and how these women today are surviving despite xenophobia, family separation, linguistic isolation, and economic precarity. Second, I'll collaborate with women on paper cuts, sharing how their migrations have motivated them to address immigration, housing, labor, and safety in their communities. Third, I'll integrate the paper cuts into lanterns to be displayed in storefronts in 3 San Francisco neighborhoods. Finally, I'll create and distribute trilingual maps and lead walking tours to uplift these women's stories. I believe this collaborative effort has the potential to do what Bay Windows do, create a new space that didn't exist before, widen views, and let in light.
There's a lot going on these days around mass deportation. Every day we see new headlines about people being arrested, detained, and deported from the US, some without due process, some to countries they have no ties to. This is all a lot. How can you fight what you don't understand? It's hard to keep up with something that's constantly changing and emotionally fraught. It's easy to get distracted by the next bad thing and to let the problems grow. This is where a cartoonist and former public high school teacher may be able to help. My name is T. Bowie, and I am a writer, artist, and educator. I'm best known for a graphic memoir called The Best We Could Do. The book is widely used as a textbook to teach people about the Vietnam War. I like to say that a well-drawn and well-written comic is the perfect Trojan horse to get readers to engage with a subject they might not otherwise seek out. I hope to achieve this with my current book, titled Nowhere Land. Since 2017, I've been following the cases of several Asian Americans caught in the immigrant detention and deportation system. In the process of researching how they got there, I have learned a lot that I want to share. Nowhere Land is a wake-up call to Americans that the injustices perceived to affect only some of us actually harm us all. I want to inform and to move people to feel these injustices, and I want to invite them into the work that has already begun to imagine new ways to create safety and freedom and dismantle old systems that perpetuate harm. No matter what their ethnic background is, a reader will learn something from this book and come away with new tools for empathy, understanding, and hopefully change-making.
Here's my grandmother as a girl. Here's my mother as a girl. Here I am as a girl. This is my daughter, who's a girl now. Where did we begin? How did we travel here? What was the shape of our movement? What was its rhythm? What was its why? Who came here before us? How do we resemble them? How did we learn to run? Who taught us to dance? Who made us sit still? When did we rest? Who welcomed us when we came here? Where did they move when we came closer? What did they say when we wanted to stay? What did they want us to give? Who did we say we were? What did they fear we would steal? What did we come here to see? Who did we come here to know? For whom did we remain? How did we know this place could be ours? Why did we make it ours? When will they know it is? I am Divya Victor. I am a poet and an essayist. These are some of the questions I am trying to answer in my book, Kin. Kin is a book that tries to answer these questions through the eyes of girls and women, femmes and trans women of the South Asian diaspora. It is a book about music, visual culture, architecture, film, and literature that centers our sensuous pleasure, our curiosity, our aesthetic discernment, our changing beliefs, our emotional lives, our tastes, and our thirsts, our thinking and our making of this world.
My name is Janelle VanderKelen. I'm a filmmaker and artist, and my films imagine alternative acts of collaboration between interspecies entities. I use animation and time-lapse to make the movement and agency of plants, geologies, and fungi visible for human audiences. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about Hildegard of Bingen. Hildegard was a 12th century Benedictine abbess, composer, and self-taught naturalist. Hildegard also had visions where she saw threads of golden light dynamically connecting all life on Earth. My feature film, The Golden Thread, reimagines these connective strands as the fungal mycorrhiza that connect plant roots in large interspecies networks. The Golden Thread uses Hildegard's writings and environmental ideologies as a starting point to explore contemporary scientific discoveries about the roles fungi play to slow the progression of climate change and mitigate its effects. Over the past few years, I have conducted interviews with scientists, linguists, farmers, and nuns near the Abbey of St. Hildegard. The stories of these seemingly disparate individuals are connected by fungi, and a desire for interspecies collaboration runs through the film as a guiding theme. The Golden Thread offers an opportunity to assume new, more than human eyes, capable of perceiving quiet interspecies collaborations in a swiftly changing world.
Tell Me When You Get Home is a film about connection, family, and dreams. The movie follows a young girl, Honest, who over the course of a single evening encounters the presence of her late mother at a family party. Set in the space between Honest and her Uncle O, Tell Me unfolds as a long conversation between two people who have both lost a loved one. In the movie, Honest and her uncle live in a remote village with homes that are connected to each other by bridges. This is a place where everything is on to everything else. And it's in this place when Honest feels that she's connected to the spirit of someone she's lost. I'm Tashay. I'm the director. In my experience of losing people close to me, there's a strange feeling where sometimes people are physically gone, but otherwise very present. You can feel them in the room. And part of what I'm trying to visualize is this space where a person is here, but not here. The more I started thinking about the psychic and spiritual nature of our relationships, the more I felt the film should be animated. In animation, we create images by adding more and more detail over time. Each shot is a world unto itself with its own shapes and colors, movements and sounds. We begin with a sketch, and then it's translated to a storyboard, an animatic, rough animation, and finally, color. Animation is this perfect medium to bridge the material world with the immaterial and to contend with the presence and absence of people in our lineages.
I'm Lori Felker, and my project is a fiction feature-length film called Patient. Up to this point, my films, videos, and installations have been preparing me for this film that, in terms of form, is a mix between autofiction, observation, improvisation, scripted material, comedy, and drama. In terms of theme and content, my films have always studied the multiple layers of the self, communication and miscommunication, interruptions, failure, the body, grief, and empathy. Patient is a film about a woman named Reggie who is a standardized patient or medical actor, someone who performs as a patient for med students learning about empathy, procedure, and bedside manner. One day, Reggie trips and falls on her face and has to get a head scan. This leads her down a rabbit hole of bills, bungled answers, weeks of waiting, and confusion at her job as a fake patient. I was not a standardized patient, but what happens to Reggie in terms of the face injury and the head scan actually happened to me. So this script is full of the absurd, improbable actualities of my own medical event. When Reggie is back at work, dealing with her swollen face and headaches, she's also doing her job among her coworkers, diving into 20-minute exams on physical and psychological ailments that are guided by educational goals and end in a feedback session with the students. These exams will be recorded in an almost documentary style, as I will employ actual standardized patients and observe them doing what they normally do. In 2022, while doing research for this feature script, I met a standardized patient team in Madsen, Wisconsin, and we made a short film together. Screenings of this short film have shown me that this vibration between reality and fiction, and between dramatic cinema and everyday concerns, captures the attention of audiences who really want to talk about performed, real, and perceived pain, the monetary and psychological interruptions of medical issues, and the many layers of the self that may be hidden to the public, but are always present. Right now, I'm working on the schedule, locations, budget, and casting, and I have some really exciting casting news that I can't share right now in April, but hopefully I can tell you things in June, the now that you're in right now.
Hello, my name is Juan Pablo González. My films explore the ways in which modernity has transformed the region I come from in rural Jalisco in Mexico, and the challenges that especially peasants have faced and still face when confronting and adapting to these changes. Beto Rodriguez, one of the main participants in this project, is his town's butcher and the third generation of butchers in his family. Aside from his work as a butcher, Beto takes care of his father, Jose, who is also his boss at their shop.
Se enojaba, aventaba el sombrero y se rascaba la cabeza.
Beto and Fernanda Bolaños are Beto's neighbors. They take care of their father, a former horse wrangler and farmer, also named Jose. Beto runs a nail salon out of her father's home and shares caregiving responsibilities with 3 of her sisters.
Esto es aquí. ¿Eh? Digo que estos aquí. Uy. ¿Qué se oye? Maldito.
The Measure of Time is a continuation of a decade documenting my home region, a project that is concerned, among other things, with producing an audiovisual archive of this place's transformation through the record of its daily life.
I know that you don't totally know what you're looking at, which is half the beauty of this image.
They survival during all processing in our planet when mammals and dinosaurs was died, they survived. And they can survive in ice, and they can survive without food 2 years.
You're looking at test footage for the film I'm making about alchemy, about how ancestral modes of healing can transform the insides of the body and hence transform the exterior world. What tools do we have to translate these things that are toxic into things that are not only unsullied and safe, but vital? In this film, there is a leech therapist, a blood fetishist, and a wastewater treatment plant. What are the ecological, cosmological ramifications of our human charade? What is this human charade? Where and how does it sit in our bodies, in our blood?
My name is Tana Alexa. I'm a vocalist, composer, and producer living between New York City and Barcelona. Having studied both music and psychology, I've always been extremely interested in the ways in which music can affect the human condition and human connections. The pandemic made me reevaluate my relationship with music and the way that I see the significance of the energy created in a live music setting, as well as the power of deep listening in a non-live music setting. Listening to and being surrounded by music and sound is known to heal bodies riddled with trauma. Even single tones and their frequencies can ignite inspiration, creativity, concentration, and diffuse the effects of stress. Through research and conversations with experts in the worlds of medicine, psychology, neurology, music, and sound therapy, I will be creating a song cycle called Resonance. Resonance will explore how the effects of sound frequencies can awaken emotional states, change us on a physiological level, on a molecular level, help us navigate mental health, and also aid us in our creativity in the context of this dopamine culture that hinders the creation of art. This music, like all of my work before it, will stem from my personal experiences and my life stories, but I believe that there will be many elements of the music and the sound that will be universal and will send the message that we can heal ourselves through sound. Sound, like water, always finds its way.
I have found that letting go and allowing myself to deep dive into the rhythms of nature, I am caught and held just as music has held me so many times. I have found myself in a lightness, floating in our landscapes, both rugged and gentle. I might return from the field exhausted and sometimes sit for a moment, yet only transitory. My name is Susie Ibarra. I'm a composer, percussionist, and sound artist. My middle name is Chen. My middle name means meditation, and my last name means the river that runs between two mountains. I realize I am continually mirroring these words, reflecting on ancestral nature when I go out on the field to record. Chan is a two-part opera installation which tells the stories and love for these dear wild landscapes with poetry, vocals, site-specific built and natural instruments, and ensembles. Its first part iteration of Kundiman's Filipino love songs was premiered in Berlin at Mkrtichian Berlin Festspiel 2025 in co-production with the DAAD, Deutsche Akademische Aufstandsdienst. In southern Colorado and Utah, I will be bringing a percussion ensemble, my trio Talking Gong with Claire Chase and Alex Pei, and conductor Valeria Goth and the San Francisco Girls Chorus to two places, Fantasy Canyon, to perform the sandstone and siltstone lithophones, and to sing along the river confluences and whispering resonant caves of Dinosaur Monument National Park, as well as recording inside the resonant tank in which often a note can last for possibly 40 seconds. We will record Chan in the canyons and in the tank. With this, I will create an installation and performative opera work in which we can install in different venues.
Hi, my name is Marika, and I'm a theater artist making work about place and identity. I'm developing a non-fiction theater performance titled Show Full History. And in a way, this work begins with this image. This is my mother, right here in the middle, and her family in Tunisia in September 61. This picture was taken just a few hours before they embarked on a boat journey from Tunis to migrate to France. And that very crossing has created a gap in the story of my family. A gap in our understanding of who we are, where we come from, and where we belong. And so, in Show Full History, I am trying to overcome that gap. I'm trying to piece together my family story from secondhand memories, from faded documents, and by going on late-night Google sprees. The title, Show Full History, refers to the browser command that lists all the websites that you have visited, showing sort of your online diary. And in this work, I take the audience down my own internet rabbit hole, from tracing images of a long-lost village in the hills of Tunisia, to discovering a forgotten feminist actress and independence fighter, to her murderer who carried the same name as my grandfather, to online forums about diasporic families, and back to the memory of a necklace breaking on the edge of a ship crossing the Mediterranean, and a string of pearls falling in the ocean below. And in this process, I asked myself, what are we actually looking for when we search the internet? What game are the algorithm and I playing with each other? How is technology shaping perceptions of our history, of each other, but also of ourselves? And where are the edges of what we can know, of what we can remember?
Commercial is a media-centric, music-driven play created in collaboration with Christopher Marinetti and Found Sound Nation. The story of the play is sparked by the wrongful death of Stephon Clark. This happened in my hometown, Sacramento, California. I soon learned that the Black police officer who shot him was a childhood friend. Commercial intentionally stretches the definition of based on a true story. The protagonist is a fictionalized version of myself.
That was writer, performer, and activist Marquise Johnson.
So he does what I would do in that position.
I'm gonna make theater again.
Oh, God.
And from the top, he is resisting pressures to make it exploitative.
At least write a musical, like Hamilton. You do the rapping and stuff.
It's not gonna be about old dead white men.
It's gonna deal with racism, right?
Yes, of course.
Then it's about old dead white men.
It is Hamilton.
But when the media hype dies and the news story is no longer compelling enough to keep people sitting through the commercial, Marquise resorts to sensationalism, inciting another tragic event.
Marquise's art and reality begin to blur, and the narrative becomes interrupted by intrusive commercial segments.
So all of this takes place in Marquise's apartment, and though he is alone on stage, the narrative is pushed forward by his interactions with friends, agents, news anchors, and all mediated through screens and phones. Really capturing our post-COVID, post-ChatGPT world in a sort of alternative history version of 2018.
Because this piece speaks to how algorithms and AI intersect with mass media, we utilize generative AI to change my voice and face into 12 different characters.
Making us question whether we can trust what appears on screen.
Which is frightening considering how much screens are part of our modern life. Who can we really trust?
It's just that it's all been commercial.
When motion is captured, it doesn't become a static artifact. It can be manipulated, or recontextualized, ported from body to body, abstracted. A gesture made public. This project lives between the gesture, what the body invents, and the public, what is presumed, by which I mean codified, by which I mean literally made code and figuratively made convention. Yet the live body, in its complexity, subverts these categorizations, and the computational body isn't as rigid as it seems. It remains impressionable. As a live body, I'm trying to make an impression on the model, the social model, the animation model, the stock model, the AI model. That impression sits somewhere between liberation and uncanniness, somewhere tense that's both of and outside the body, something that deals with normalization but also glitch, impossibility, queerness. Individual gestures made public, a gestural public. Gestural Publics is a project that includes an evening-length dance performance and an online motion capture archive. The choreographic trajectory of the performance will demonstrate the transformation from the rigid replication of normative gestures to glitched, fluid, and queered alternatives to what the computer proposes. These unique human-computer-made gestures will then be made public on an archival website, where people will be able to download, use, and reuse the animations for their own creative endeavors. Through live performance and evolving archive, this work positions the dancing body not as a subject of capture, but as an agent of transformation, creating a system where the errors of human interpretation instead become generative parameters for an expansive and subversive gestural public.
My name is Mkrtichian Alahiari, and my work challenges complex counter-narratives to the influence of digital colonialism in the context of the Middle East and North Africa. For the last 3 years, I've been working on a project called The Remaining Signs of Future Centuries, taking the format of a feature-length, a speculative documentary film, and a series of sculptural installations. This project will trace the neglected history of Islamic hate science and technology as an anchor point for seeing ourselves as the people of MENA into our own imaginations. In this project, I will examine innovative devices and ideas of the Islamic Golden Era. Tools such as optics, clocks, geomantic tablets, celestial objects will be paired with female Arab and Iranian historians, scientists, and future tellers. These experts present us with a series of interviews, historical stories, and poetic predictions for reconsidering a future for the Middle East, a region that is living in a dystopian present. The Islamic Golden Era is particularly interesting to me because it allows for not only understanding and refiguring of our past, but also a reimagination and refiguration of our present and our future. The growth of knowledge during this era served as an anchor for the development of many Western scientific and cultural innovations. My project builds a case for advocating that science needs magic, inspired by the scientists and inventors of the Islamic world who were interested in understanding and building connections to the mysteries of the universe. For example, Ibn al-Haytham, known as the father of optics, was both a scientist, a poet, and a spiritual practitioner. He did not perceive a fundamental contradiction between empirical observation and metaphysical beliefs. In my film, I want to offer a poetic proposal. We must return and invest in a practice of progress through the path of magic and occult, defined as phenomena involving otherworldly agencies.
Hello, my name is Shayla Blatchford of the Anti-Uranium Mapping Project, and I am based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we are in my home studio where I have been chipping away at this project full-time for the past few years. It's been evolving over the past 10 years, but what this project is an educational database on the uranium mining on the Navajo Nation. And what I've found over the years is that a lot of the information related to these issues of nuclear weapons, nuclear power, and just the general history of this problem is that a lot of it is very censored and fractured. And it's very harmful to the communities that are, living directly next to these sites of uranium mining or who have worked in these mines. Zoomed in aerial of Grandpa's homestead in Lupton. That's the house. Here's a cornfield. And making a note that her grandpa passed away from cancer in 2008, and that all of this was impacted by the spill at Church Rock. A lot of these people haven't been compensated, and a lot of them are being denied various forms of help. So what I'm trying to do is create the most impactful way to create an educational website on this issue. So I'm bringing in photography, video, other multimodal ways of learning and taking in information with the hopes of a higher retention rate and hopefully instilling some sort of empathy. And with that, I dream of people taking action and providing broad support for Indigenous peoples who are dealing with extractive mining corporations.
My name is Alice Bucknell, and I'm an artist, writer, and educator based in Los Angeles. My work explores video games as interfaces for understanding complex systems, relationships, and forms of knowledge. My Creative Capital project, Earth Engine, speculates on the idea of planetary play. What does it mean to play as a planet? Well, in Earth Engine, typical game mechanics are inverted. The Earth itself becomes the main player, and the human is more like an NPC. The game world is dynamic and ever-evolving, learning from the players that play it. Merging players' local climate data with far-flung climate forecasts, alongside the Earth's own whims, desires, moods, It's kind of like an ecological Tamagotchi. The game is inspired by walking simulators, a type of video game where the agency of the player comes second to the world that they inhabit. The story of the world reveals itself to them slowly through the act of slowing down, noticing, and paying attention. For a while now, I've been interested in this concept of video games that play the player. Earth Engine carries this interest forward, but extends it to the scale of a planetary. At the same time, Earth Engine is also interested in exposing the limits of predictive technology. It draws on advanced climate modeling and geospatial data to ask, what kind of futures can we build together through a collective becoming, versus having to default to the mappable, the modifiable, the knowable. The game will be available to play both online and in various exhibitions starting from autumn 2025. Thanks for listening, and I'm excited to see you play.